Today, we're going to book a San Francisco tennis court via MCP server hosted on Cloudflare, and it's authenticated by Stytch. So I'm going to book it, and only I can book it. You cannot book a court in my name with my account. And we're going to use Cloudflare browser rendering to scrape the court's information and log in so that it acts as me. So the headless browser acts like I do. Let's see it in action. Here I am in Cloud Desktop, and we're going to say, check tennis courts at Alice Marble for this Friday. And this text response will trigger the check tennis courts tool, and it will use Cloudflare browser rendering to scrape the courts that are open at Alice Marble. And if you live in San Francisco, you know that you can also book Dolores, DuPont, McLaren, Joe DiMaggio. And this tool is not authenticated, so anyone can run it. You don't need to be me. And it parses out Alice Marble, and it knows today's date, and it knows that this Friday is August 8th. Okay. So it's 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 2 p.m. 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 2 p.m. are open at Alice Marble for Friday, August 8th. And we could check Balboa, Buena Vista, etc. as well. But let's book it via MCP server. Let's say book 1 p.m. I'm not a morning person, so I don't play in the morning. And it knows to book for the date that we were talking about, the 8th at 1 p.m., Alice Marble. But first, booking has to be authenticated. So we use Stytch, and we have a front end. And I'm going to continue with Google OAuth. And only certain emails can book this court. And I say, go back, and I'm like, authenticated. And now it's going to text me a number, a code. It's running the book and request SMS tool, and rec.us, the San Francisco Parks and Rec tennis court booking system, will text me a code. And they do this if you book a court via the browser yourself, because it wants to know that you are a human. Because so many people book tennis courts and then don't go, and people also automate the booking because it can be difficult to get a tennis court. Rec.us is the new booking system. They used to use something called Spottery, but this one is new. I got a verification code. The code is 567955. And then it's going to take that code and run, enter SMS code, and complete. And it's going to take that query, that text input, type it into a text box via Cloudflare browser rendering, and click enter. And enter SMS code and complete. That tool should run, and our booking should be complete. Booking is confirmed for Alice Marble, Friday, August 8th at 1 p.m. for my personal email. Let's check that. So in SF Parks and Rec, I have one reservation here. And here we have a court reservation booked via MCP server. Nice. So how that authentication process works. When a user needs to access a protected tennis booking tool, they first authenticate through the React front end. That handles our Google OAuth flow via Stytch. Pending or after successful OAuth, the front end then calls our MCP server's Authenticate endpoint with the user's information and session token. The MCP server then verifies that the user is authenticated, checking Cloudflare KV storage. This acts as our persistent memory storage that remembers who is authenticated. Later, when the user tries to book a tennis court in my name or in their name through their MCP client like Cloud Desktop, Cursor, Windsurf, whatever, the MCP server checks Cloudflare KV to verify that they have a valid email address before executing the protected tool. This way, users only authenticate once via the web through the Authenticate endpoint, but can make multiple tool calls. KV storage bridges that gap between web authentication and MCP tool authorization. Let's look at our MCP server and how to build it. To first get started building my MCP server to book a tennis court, I was in the Cloudflare documentation, and I clicked the Deploy to Cloudflare button. They gave me some code for an MCP server that I then cloned, and then I added my own tools. They gave me a tool that was like multiplication. So it was like a great starter tool. And then I made my own tools. Your MCP server has a wrangler.jsonc file. Here we have some Cloudflare bindings so that we can use other Cloudflare products from within our MCP server. This should look familiar to you if you have used Cloudflare workers. Durable objects and observability were already there. And then I added the AI binding so that I could use Cloudflare workers AI models. Browser, so I could use Cloudflare browser rendering to scrape a web page, hit a web page, crawl a web page, enter text so I could log in on a web page. And KV namespaces, because again, KV is our data storage, and KV for our data storage for MCP. Some key code snippets. We have our login function for front-end OAuth configuration. This configures Stytch to redirect users through Google OAuth and return them to the authenticate/authenticate endpoint, establishing the entry point for the entire authentication flow. And here is our authentication callback page, so we can exchange the token and notify the backend. This is the critical handoff where the front end exchanges the Google OAuth token for a Stytch session and then immediately notifies the MCP server with the authenticated user's details, bridging the gap between the front end authentication and the back-end authorization. So that was our auth.tsx file. And then here in index.ts, this is kind of like the meat of our MCP server. We have our store MCP session helper function. It's important to store the session for MCP access because MCP tools run in a separate context from the web front end. They don't have access to the front end's authentication state, like local storage or Stytch's session. So the MCP server needs its own persistent way to verify that a user is authorized when they call protected tools. Here in our async fetch function, if we get a post request, we check if the user is authenticated on the back end. This tool authentication guard is how we enforce that each protected MCP tool verifies a valid session exists before executing the tool, completing the security chain from OAuth to tool execution. And we can look at some of our tools to check the tennis court availability. Again, there's no authentication because anyone can check tennis courts. It takes in a date if you want to check a certain date, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or like you could say like September 2nd, like a specific date. You can check a specific court, Alice Marble, Dolores, DuPont, Buena Vista. If you're in San Francisco, you should know these. These are all public tennis courts in San Francisco. And it could be like check for the morning, noon, 2 p.m., be specific, but those are optional. Then here, page.goto, we use Cloudflare browser rendering to go to that web page. We try to navigate to the specific court page, so like Alice Marble, whatever the user typed in. Wait for the selector text equals court reservations. Open the date picker, select the specific date we're looking for, and then we return the availability data. It's like court, date, available times. Is the requested time available if they requested a time? Total slots. And then we pass that data to a Cloudflare Workers AI call so that we can like return a nice, friendly, human-ish message. And here is the book court and request SMS tool. Again, this one is protected. It's authenticated because not everyone should be able to book a court in my name. And I use Cloudflare secrets to hide my email and my password, so you cannot have those. And it takes in court time and date, so it needs to know what court to book, when to book, and what date to book. Here is our authenticate check. Like, is it authenticated? If so, run this tool. Else, don't run the tool. Okay. We get the email, my password, so it can log in. Go to that page again, rec.us/sfrecpark, log in, check the date, check the time, select the participant. So it's me on my account. And these are steps that I had to go through myself. I had to physically go to the web page. I had to go to rec.us/sfrecpark, and I had to try to book the court myself first. So I knew what steps I wanted the headless browser to take, that I wanted to automate. You can use Cloudflare cron jobs, Cloudflare workers cron triggers to say, book this court, run this tool every Wednesday at 2 p.m. So you can book a court every week. You can automate that. You should authenticate plenty of your MCP servers because not everyone should be able to do things in your name. And I think that's a big part of why I'm excited for MCP servers and agentic tools. You can automate things, and these servers and agents can pretend to be you, and they can take action. So they don't just need to check data. They can also run a series of steps. So I can't wait to see what you build with Cloudflare MCP, Cloudflare browser rendering, and Stytch authentication. I can't wait to see what you build.
Lizzie, I heard you booked us some courts.
David, we're on a sport!
But my knees!